As homemakers, we keep working to make our homemaking experience easier, more efficient, and of course a blessing to our families through a number of practices that we will adopt, such as meal prepping. And that's why in today's video I thought to share the process of how I worked recently on a number of recipes just to prepare me in ensuring that I have breakfast recipes that are available for my family, as well as recipes that I could turn to, especially to make quick meals over lunchtime, now that we are a homeschooling family as well. So join me for today's video that I trust will be a blessing and an inspiration on your own homemaking journey. In case you're new here, my name is Clara, a mother of two, a homeschooling, work from home, stay-at-home mom who is passionate about matters of womanhood and the woman, and viewing that from a biblical perspective. This first day of baking is actually after supper. I had fed my sourdough starter earlier today and it's active and ready for us to work with it. I also have some whey. I make cheese, and this time I had made some mozzarella cheese as well as cream cheese, and so I gathered quite some whey, had kept it in the freezer, defrosted it through the day, and now we are ready to work with it. But because it's still a bit cold, I'm going to warm it for just a few minutes so that we have it lukewarm and ready to work with our recipes. I am beginning my first recipe and I'm working on 4 loaves of bread. I have discovered a way of working with sourdough and the bread just tastes normal now that my people don't mind sourdough, but the taste has been a bit something they have been trying to adjust to. I personally don't mind, but I realized when I add bicarbonate of soda in my recipes, they just taste normal and nice, and I am happy with that because I still have the benefit of allowing my recipes to bulk ferment and therefore have more, the nutrients really break down, because the sourdough will work on the nutrients to break them down so that they are easier for the body to digest with the long ferment. So I'm working with this first sourdough sandwich bread. I have gathered the wet ingredients. That's my 1.5 cups active sourdough starter, 2/3 cup cooking oil, 1 egg, and 2 cups of whey. You can also use milk instead of whey. We will start with 2 cups and then the last 1 cup we will add in a little at a time. I have mixed that and now I'm adding in my 8 cups of all-purpose flour. I have added in 2 teaspoons of salt, adding 1/2 cup of sugar and 1.5 teaspoons baking soda. So I'm just ensuring that the dry ingredients mix. Usually, if you have a lot of time, you can mix these dry ingredients separately. I have decided to work with them in the same bowl in order to save on having a lot of dirty dishes. That's why you can see I'm using my hands just to make sure they mix somewhat at the surface, and then using my cooking stick to mix, and then to a point where now I begin working with my hands. So you can see the last cup of whey or milk, I'm adding in a little at a time to get it to a very soft sticky dough. I like my bread with that soft sticky dough, not runny, just soft but sticky, so that it will taste very nice as the end product. So I'm going to mix this until everything has come together. And once that has happened, I will gather it together in my bowl or basin. I'm using a basin now that's a lot of bread dough that I'm working with. I'm actually going to make 4 loaves. I don't know if I mentioned that. I will cover it and allow it to rest for about 30 minutes, and then I'll come back to it just to mix it so that it comes back together really nicely. Now that once it's rested, it's actually easier to work with before I give it that final bulk ferment. So I'm working on these recipes at night so that I can bake them the next morning, because I want to have them bulk ferment for at least 8 to 10 hours if possible. At least I like to bulk ferment for at least 4 hours, at most 8 hours. Now, having done the 4 loaves, we get to our second recipe. That's easy sourdough rolls, another recipe that I'm working on with 3/4 cup active sourdough starter. I'm starting with 1 cup of whey. I will add in 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of melted margarine or butter. I'm working with margarine, but if you have butter, it's even healthier. So once I've mixed this, I will add in 4 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm adding in also a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 cup sugar, 1 teaspoon bicarbonate of soda. All these recipes, I will link them below. I hope really I will remember once I upload them on our other channel, Recipes and Hospitality with Clara, because there I work with one individual recipe, so I'm able to explain it in detail. If there's any improvement done, I also tend to improve in it now that I'm just focusing on one recipe, so I'll make sure to do that together with their blog posts at the time when I get to write the blog posts, because with blog posts at least you're able to print the recipe. So I will work with the remaining whey or milk or even water. By the way, you can work with water and get it again to a soft sticky dough. I just like my bread this way. I find it nice to work with when it's soft and sticky, as long as it's not runny, as you can see. So again, give it about 30 minutes to relax. Then I'll show you what we will do before we have it bulk ferment. I don't keep a lot of sourdough starter because I don't like having a lot of discard just lying around. So I have finished my sourdough for today. That's why I'm working this evening with just 3 recipes so that I can feed it and tomorrow work on some more recipes. So I have begun with my 3/4 cup of sourdough starter. And I haven't mentioned that now I'm working on sourdough sandwich maker cakes. Very tasty, by the way. So 3/4 cup active sourdough starter, a cup of whey. We will finish with the other cup when we finish. A 1/2 cup cooking oil, and the vanilla we will add after the bulk ferment tomorrow. So once I've mixed the wet ingredients, I will add in the 4 cups all-purpose flour, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2/3 cup sugar or as preferred, and 1.5 teaspoons baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. By the way, again, you can do without the sourdough, but like I said, sourdough just makes your recipes even healthier, especially when you are accustomed to cooking your meals from scratch. So that's why I am incorporating sourdough. You don't have to, but if you would like to, that would be good. And some of these recipes that I've done without sourdough, I will also link them in the description below in case you don't have sourdough or you're not yet on that journey. So I'm adding in the 2nd cup of milk or whey or water. You could do 1/2 milk, 1/2 water until we get it to a very thick, heavy paste. So in case you need some more liquid, just ensure to get the dough to that thick, heavy paste. So again, you can do without the sourdough, but of course the sourdough is good. And in case you're not yet on that journey, I will also link below in the description the recipe where I have worked on my sourdough starter from scratch, and now I just feed it, keep it in the freezer, in the fridge, not freezer, fridge, and feed it once a week, and we are good to go with it every week, working on recipes so that we have healthier recipes. So once we have had our batter ready for our sandwich maker cakes, I am covering it so that it also bulk ferments until tomorrow morning. You can see I'm feeding my sourdough starter with a full cup of flour because I need a lot, as you can see tomorrow. You can see I barely had any left, just a little, but usually as long as that container has even a little sourdough, it's going to actively work through the rest, especially when the sourdough has been around for a number of months, as mine has. It will work very well tomorrow. You will actually see how it will look like tomorrow. So having worked on the recipes, this is about 30 minutes later. So I'm getting to just work kind of give it some kind of knead. That's why these recipes, I would say, are partial knead. They are partial no knead, actually, because I'm not really kneading them on the surface. I'm just working on them like I'm doing in a way to ensure that they are even more smooth and ready for our bulk ferment. So I'm not doing much. I'm just doing this for about 2 to 3 minutes and then go give it that bulk ferment. The other thing I will do with this recipe, I will apply some grease on the surface, because usually with a long ferment, it will kind of form some kind of crust. And when I apply grease on the surface, just a little, it will form the crust, yes, but it will not be as hard. So this is again the easy sourdough rolls one that I'm also working in for about 2 to 3 minutes. I really did feel like I should harass my surface and have to clean it very seriously with dough. So that's why I'm working on it just in the pan for 2 to 3 minutes, just stretching and folding it over itself and such. And then I am applying some cooking oil on the surface, as you can see, like I did also to the other one with the 4 loaves. And then we are ready to have it bulk ferment through the night. So basically we are done with the 3 recipes I thought of working on after supper, because I thought I don't want to sleep late. So 3 were good to go, and that's what we would be sufficient with the sourdough starter that I had. This is the next morning. I think some of you have probably heard that we live near Mount Kenya, actually between Mount Kenya and the Aberdares. It's such a beautiful scenery. We usually don't get to see the Aberdares because of, trees, but look at that mountain. That is Mount Kenya. And our sun rises somewhere near the mountain. So it's always a beautiful scene, and I'm grateful our daughters love that. When it's a clear day, they love to get the camera out and to capture this. And I thought, let me share with you this. This is about 6:30. We've just had our devotion in the word, prayer, scripture memory, whatever the Lord has helped us to do in order to maintain our walk with Him. So you can see that part of what I was bulk fermenting, the easy sourdough rolls, the sandwich bread, the sourdough sandwich bread. By the way, the bicarbonate of soda just makes all the difference. You won't be able to tell, especially if you have issues with sourdough, you won't be able to tell. The bread is just good. And I forgot to also mention that even in the easy rolls, I added a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, so you shouldn't forget that. So now I get to grease my pan so that I can work on my easy sourdough rolls. I put all of them in one baking tin, but I will show you what I prefer to do with the other ones I will make as we continue with our breakfast meal prep. Because what happened, as much as I put all of them in one pan, they actually held together, and so we ate them really as though we were eating bread, because they separated, but they didn't form those nice bun-like buns that you can buy at your local store or supermarket. So I thought next time I'm going to bake fewer ones in a pan, and we will see. So just went ahead. I love this scraper. I love the way actually it works with recipes. So got to divide my dough into 8 equal pieces and got to arrange it in my greased baking tin. So basically working on each piece to form that nice round shape, and then placing it in the tin. Once we've done this to all the pieces, I'm going to cover this baking tin and allow it again to just continue fermenting for about an hour, as well as proofing as we continue on to our next recipe. So now that my bowl is free, I don't have to wash it. Thank God for meal prepping. Save some time in that way. So I'm doing the next recipe where I'm working with yeast, actually the same recipe but with yeast, because I still love to give my family that opportunity to have their favorite yeast recipes. So I've worked with 1 cup of whey initially, 1 tablespoon melted margarine or butter, 1 egg, and adding in 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon salt, 1.5 teaspoons yeast, as well as a 1/4 cup of sugar. So I'll mix all this and then add in the remaining cup of whey, half cup actually, I believe it's half cup of whey or milk, but in case I have forgotten, just ensure to mix it until you get to that soft sticky dough, but I believe it's half a cup of whey or milk or water. So as you mix and then get to knead with your hands, just add in the remaining liquid until you get it to that soft sticky dough as well. Ensuring to mix everything together so that we can allow it to rest. This time, because it's yeast and it will take a shorter time to proof, we don't bulk ferment really because it's yeast. I will allow it to rest for about 10 minutes and then get back to it and do what I did with the others, just folding it over itself and then allow it to proof for about 45 minutes to an hour. Just the sufficient time that is needed for it to proof or to rise really well. Of course, because of the baking, there are a bit of delays, so I know sometimes it will take over an hour, but that is still okay. I'm preparing my bread tins by just cutting up my baking paper, measuring it so that I don't waste a lot of it, and ensuring that my tins are ready. You can also grease your bread tins, but I find working with baking paper really convenient, helping you not to have to work with greasing your tins. As you know, it can really be tricky to do that. So this one has bulk fermented for about 8 hours. The dough that is going to make 4 loaves, I am transferring it onto my working surface. This one is really sticky. Usually the ones that you use margarine especially are not as sticky on the surface, but the ones that I use cooking oil, I notice they can be very sticky. So I will use some flour, especially when I get to work on them so that I can fit them into my baking tins. So again, like I said, I'm dividing it into 4 equal pieces and then working with them, just shaping them so that they can fit into my bread tin. So that's what I'm doing really, to ensure that it is shaped well with some flour. Really, I've dusted my hands with some flour and then transferring it into the baking tin. So this is what I've done with all the 4 loaves, and then I'll place them on the counter again, cover with a clean kitchen towel, and then allow them to rest for about an hour before we get to bake them. Meanwhile, we work on our next recipe. We are working on the normal sandwich bread with yeast. Again, the same like the sourdough, but this time with yeast. And I'm beginning by combining some whey or milk, that is about a cup, 1 egg, a 1/3 cup cooking oil, and then once I've stirred that up, I'm adding in 4 cups all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons yeast, and then a 1/4 cup of sugar. So I'm going to combine that with my wooden spoon, and then once I've done that, go ahead and knead with my hands, or rather mix everything so that everything comes together really well. I will also add in the extra 1/2 to 3/4 cup of liquid. Like I said, you could use water even. If you have whey, that's okay. If you have milk, that's okay. This is one of the ways I actually make use of my whey so that I don't have to waste it. So once I mixed that, I covered and set it aside, and then this was 10 minutes later, so I took the normal yeast rolls and also got to knead it, like I said, for about 2 to 3 minutes in the pan, just folding it over itself like I'm doing, all sorts of motions really to just make sure that it's smoothened out after the rest of 10 minutes. So once I've done this, now I will cover it and give it an hour, 40 minutes to an hour. Because this is morning and our place happens to be cold, I'm working with some water that is not very hot. As you saw, I could put in my hands, place my dough over it like I did, so that with the warmth from that water that is not too warm but not too hot, it's just bearable for our yeast. The yeast will have formed that microclimate to allow for our dough really to proof. You can see how our sourdough, has done very well, thickened really well, bubbly, very nice. So again, we are now working on our sourdough chapati stroke tortilla recipe. This one I'm testing it. It's kind of like tortillas, but basically it's like chapati, as you will see. And the reason I'm working with it this way is because I won't fry later when it has bulk fermented. I won't fry with cooking oil. I will just dry fry the way we do with tortillas, so that I will work with it with one of the breakfast recipes that I hope to share in a soon coming video. So working with 3/4 cup sourdough starter, as you saw. 1 cup of water initially, but we will add in about 1/2 cup later to get it to a soft dough. 4 tablespoons cooking oil, 2 tablespoons sugar. Once I'd mixed that, I added in 4 cups all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of salt, 2.5 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. I forgot to add in the bicarbonate of soda when I was adding in the all-purpose. That's why I've added it in later. So mixed that until everything had come together very well, and because this was going to bulk ferment, I allowed it to rest for 30 minutes, then I'll come back to it. So meanwhile, got to clear my surface. I had been working on it, as you saw, from around 6:30 in the morning, and now we were ready to work on our sandwich maker cakes. So our bread, as you can see, in an hour has already fermented well, together with our easy rolls. Again, it has proofed very well together with our easy rolls. And then that is our sandwich maker cake batter that has proofed overnight. You can see it's really risen very well. So before I start working on it, I'm adding in the vanilla extract or essence. I prefer to add it when it has bulk fermented, and now we are ready to work on it, to cook it in our sandwich maker. So I've mixed it in until it is well mixed in, really evenly mixed in. So now I'm going to grease my sandwich maker. Thankfully, this process of applying the grease with my hands, because I do it manually, it won't happen for every cooking that we do. It will happen just this first time, and then after that we will just keep adding in a little of the marge or butter in case you're using butter, and then our sandwich maker cakes will be good to go. So I've greased both the upper part and the lower part with about 1/4 or slightly less of a teaspoon of marge, really in each groove until well greased, as you have seen. So I'm going to just use a tablespoon to fill each groove with our butter. Yeah, so just ensure it is filled fully but not overflowing. Definitely, of course, just enough to fill the groove and to fill it really well as I'm doing. This was a recipe that we were testing that I'm looking forward to sharing with us because it was delicious. I can tell you that for sure. So gave it about 6 minutes and it was good to go. So I'm just using a skewer there to be sure that it's cooked on the inside, making sure not to harass my sandwich maker, because really you don't want to use metal on it now that it can peel off, and it can give you issues in the future when you are cooking with it, in case that black part on the surface peels off. So you want to be careful not to use metal with it. That's why I'm using an non-stick turner over there, as you can see, to work on my sandwich maker, to transfer them onto a tray that I have lined with paper towel. So what I'm doing now is just adding a little, about a quarter a teaspoon of the mash. I've switched off the sandwich maker, so add in each of the grooves. You don't have to grease the upper part. It will be good to go up to the end, and then gone ahead and refilled the grooves with the next set of sandwich maker cakes. Cover, allow it 5 minutes, check on it, and give it 1 more minute, a total of 6 minutes, and you're good to go. This is about an hour plus, perhaps later. Our sandwich bread dough really is ready, so I'm going to apply some egg white on it. This is egg white I used in some previous recipes a few days ago. I'd kept it in the fridge, so I just removed it and got to apply some of it on my bread loaves. So we now had our first recipe in the oven, at least for the oven, so that it could bake. So those are our first sandwich maker cakes made with sourdough. I needed to show this because sometimes, I don't know if your sandwich maker sometimes does this, or the pieces go on the upper part, but they will still fare well, because when you just nudge them a little with your turner or a spoon that is non-stick, they will just come off. So as one set was cooking, I got to work on my tortilla stroke chapati dough, again just turning it over itself like I'm doing for about 2 to 3 minutes, so that now I could allow it to bulk ferment until evening when I was coming to work on it. Can you believe it? I had forgotten to switch on my sandwich maker. I got to switch on so that we could continue. I like to switch on and off so that I'm able to pour in the dough and then cover and switch on again. So now our chapati or tortilla dough is done. So cover and place it in a place where it will not be disturbed, a place that is not too cold, so that it can bulk ferment. We live in an area that is not very hot, so really if you place it anywhere it won't over ferment really, because I'm told also the dough shouldn't over ferment. You can even transfer it to the fridge, but I find our temperatures not very high really, so I think our doughs fare very well in our kitchen. So we are about to finish working on the sandwich maker ones. We will store half of them in the freezer and have some of them this morning for breakfast. And I can tell you we enjoyed these ones a great deal. I trust you will enjoy as well. So our sandwich maker bread is ready. And our easy sourdough rolls are also ready to get into the oven. So still using the same egg wash to apply on the surface so that they can have that nice finish once they are ready. You can see how our bread looks like, and we are loving it, by the way, because we have already started enjoying these recipes for our breakfasts as well as some of the lunches. Now you can see how the sandwich maker cakes turned out. They have a very nice texture. I think when you try them at home, you'll just see for yourselves. We really loved them. So again, just having had our breakfast, that's how our easy sourdough rolls turned out. Looking very nice, as you can see, and they were tasty. I only hope to work with them in a way that I can have whole buns that you can work with, even with recipes such as burgers and such. But no problem, we still enjoyed them. And that's how our sandwich bread sourdough looked like. Now this is what I mean, because this is how I worked with the normal yeast rolls. I placed them individually, because usually when I place on a baking sheet in the oven, mine just don't turn out the way I like, because with a gas oven, I don't know why ours don't brown nicely on the surface, but when you place them in a tin like this, that's when they turn out really nicely. So even with the sourdough ones, I think in future I'm going to work with them this way, fewer in a tin, so that they can form very nice buns. So again, just applying some egg wash on the surface so that we could go ahead and bake them. I had to prepare and leave the house at some point for a meeting, and so my daughter handled this for me, ensuring that the buns were baked, finished with those, and then went ahead to bake the remaining 2 pieces of the normal sandwich bread with yeast. So that's how our bread looks like. You have seen how our buns looked like, and we really loved them. Now this is the night of the second day. I went out, had a long meeting, came back, and after supper got to start working on these cakes, because these were some of the last recipes that I had to handle. And let me begin with this simple sourdough cake. It's actually sourdough lemon vanilla cake that we really enjoy. I began by having in my pan my sourdough starter, 3/4 cup, 1 egg, 3/4 cup cooking oil, whey or milk. I started with 1 cup, and then vanilla and the lemon rind I'm going to add in the next day after the bulk ferment. Then we added in 3 cups all-purpose flour, 2/3 cup of sugar, or as preferred, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1.5 teaspoons baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of bicarbonate. So I mixed that and then added 1/2 cup of water. But if you have milk or more whey, you can use whey or milk instead of water. But it still fared well. So once I'd mixed it really well, I covered it and transferred it to a place where it wouldn't be disturbed, so that we could bake it the next day after it had bulk fermented. And now we are working on our sourdough chocolate cake. I began by combining the dry ingredients this time, especially because I wanted the cocoa powder to mix in really well. So 3 cups all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup sugar, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1 teaspoon bicarbonate of soda, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Mixed that, and then added in now the 3/4 cup sourdough starter, 1 egg, 1 cup of whey. Actually, if I was using fresh milk only, I would add vinegar, a tablespoon of vinegar to the fresh milk, just to make it mala or coagulate, so that it becomes sour, because this is also another way of using your sour milk. If you have sour milk, use it in chocolate cake. But because I had whey, I didn't have to add vinegar. So I began with 1 cup, then 3/4 cups cooking oil. I was going to add the vanilla the next day after the bulk ferment, and of course I did. So mixed that, and as I continued to mix, added in 1/2 cup of milk, and then also added in 1/4 cup of water, so a total of 1 3/4 cups of liquid. So mixed that until it was well mixed, as you saw, and covered it again, set it aside to bulk ferment until the next day. And finally, working on our final cake, began with the sourdough starter, an egg, 3/4 cup cooking oil, as well as 1/2 cup of treacle. Now, I didn't use treacle, the normal one. I have shared on our other channel a recipe where I worked on plum jam. And because this was the season of plums, we were working on another plum jam, and I happened to overcook it so that it darkened. And I remembered that usually when I make my treacle at home, it actually turned out like treacle. And we actually concluded it was actually treacle. So instead of pouring it, we kept it in the fridge, and I'm using it as the treacle. And I can tell you now that we've eaten this cake, it was very delightful. So overcooking so that it darkened, but it made our cake taste very nice. So I'm using half a cup of that plum jam treacle, maybe let me call it that. But if you have brown sugar, you also don't have to work with treacle. That is still okay. Instead of using the normal white sugar, just use brown sugar and you're good to go. I have also a recipe on our channel, one of the earlier recipes on the other channel, Recipes and Hospitality with Clara, where I show you how to make your own treacle at home. Maybe I should link it below. We mixed that together. Then I got to add in the dry ingredients, 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 2/3 cup sugar, half a teaspoon salt, and 1.5 teaspoons baking powder, and a half teaspoon bicarbonate of soda, 1 teaspoon cinnamon spice, and 1 teaspoon mixed spice. I'm also going to add in the raisins, as you saw, or cake mix if you have cake mix the next day, but I got to dust it with flour, as you saw, because that is very good to do that. Mixed everything together, including 1 cup of water. I used water for the liquid and it still tasted great. And then again, set it aside to bulk ferment. And then I got to work now on my tortilla or chapati dough that has been fermenting the whole day, and it was good to go. So once I had mixed it and it was well mixed, as you saw, bringing everything together, I rolled it out on the surface, applied about 1.5 tablespoons of cooking oil on it, and then folded it into the dough like I'm doing. You can see what I'm doing, and ensured that I pinched off the edges so that the cooking oil can be trapped inside the dough. Then I went ahead and divided it into, usually I like to divide it into about 12 or so pieces. Now that if I worked with 16, what this recipe calls for, they get so tiny. But because I'm making them half tortilla, half chapati, I did, I think, about 12 pieces. So just using my hand to divide it, because if I cut with a knife, it becomes very tricky to pinch in the cooking oil. So I like to use the space between my thumb and my index finger to squeeze in, so that it can cut, and then now roll out the pieces so that I can fry them. Again, this one is one of the breakfast recipes that we will use, but thankfully the next video, or if not the next, the one coming after that, I'll show you what I did with this particular tortilla pieces, a recipe that I am working on that I trust will come out really well so that I can share. So just dry fry them. The good thing with tortillas, you can put any filling of your choice, like I have done on this channel before, and still have delightful breakfast recipes with your tortilla pieces. So having worked on them, set them aside so that they could cool overnight, and we were good to go. So this is now the morning of the 3rd day. Thankfully, I was not in the kitchen throughout. As you saw, the 2 days, the first day I was there in the night. This other day I was there morning hours, went out, came back late in the evening, worked on the recipes, and now I am working on these ones this morning, again partially part of the day. So again, for our lemon vanilla cake, I'm grating a lemon to get the lemon rind on the finer side of my grater. I am working on a huge lemon, that's why I'm using half of it, but you can work with lemon rind of about 1 lemon, and then added in the vanilla, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, mixed that in really well, and poured the batter into a greased pan of 1 kilogram cake. Once I'd done that, I went to the chocolate one again that had bulk fermented, added in the vanilla, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and then transferred it into my baking tin that is greased. For the fruitcake, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of orange oil. This one is optional because sometimes it's tricky to get, but makes your fruitcake taste very nice. Added in also 1 teaspoon of vanilla and got to mix that in. Added the dusted raisins as well. We dust them so that they don't sink to the bottom of the cake while the cake is baking. That's why you need to dust your raisins, or sometimes if you soak them in liquid overnight, also that helps so that they don't sink. So now we have all our 3 cakes in our tins and ready to go. Usually these 1 kilogram tins fit into my oven really well, so I go to bake all of them at the same time. Meanwhile, as they were baking, I gathered everything I had been working on from the previous day so that now I could pack it up and store it in the freezer. This is another whole process, but thankfully we are having recipes at least for the next number of breakfasts, even if not for the breakfast fully accompanying something else, but these are the ones that, as you have seen, can take long. So when you have them in your freezer, you know at least for the next 3 to 4 weeks you are sorted. Maybe 2 to 3 weeks you are sorted with breakfast recipes. So once those were safe in the freezer, our cakes were now good to go. At this point I'm showing you they have cooled somewhat, so they are almost ready to get into the freezer. So I'm still going to just cut them up so that you're able to see how they look, transfer them to the papers, but because I want them to be sure they have cooled completely, I will just leave the papers open without first zipping them up so that I'm sure they have cooled, so that in the evening they can get to be stored in the freezer. So that's our lemon vanilla cake, looking very nice. So you may not even notice the sourdough, but at least you know that the sourdough worked on the butter, breaking down the nutrients so that your body can digest them better. That's why I love sourdough. So that's one of the things you would want to consider. But again, if you don't, I will still try to link in the description below these same recipes that are done without sourdough, and I trust you will enjoy them as well. I trust that today's video has been helpful, offering some inspiration, especially on your homemaking journey as you seek to work on foods and recipes that are a blessing to your household, especially as you seek to trust the Lord that you will work on healthy recipes as you enhance your hospitality for the glory of God. So thank you so much for joining me. We will pray, as is always our custom, so that we just trust the Lord to be with us on our homemaking journey. Please, Father, be with me, be with my viewer, cause that you will be glorified, especially as we seek to do your will, as we seek to serve you in being a blessing to our families, to our households. Father, please be with my viewer and be with me, and grant that our homemaking journey will serve you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.